Hey everybody, Josh, Alternative Media here, and this is breaking news. There is officially a war between Russia and Ukraine. And while this is part of a big distraction story, it's also the latest move in the global agenda for enslavement. This has been part of a plot for a long time. We have been reporting on it for a very long time. And we can remember back in 2013, 2014, the Crimea conflict. We are now moving into the next stage of this agenda, which is actually involving war, actual physical war in countries like Ukraine and Russia. And this could reel in the US and other countries around Europe as well into war with Russia. They have been salivating for a long time over this. And by the way, there is also the attempt to push war simultaneously in China with Taiwan. This is only going to get crazier, my friends. And we are going to break apart the plot today in this video. We are going to explain what exactly is happening, how the propaganda is working, and why both sides are absolutely wrong. People who are taking sides in an issue like war obviously are fools. At this point in time, how could people still fall for the same old-fashioned war propaganda, for proxy wars, for mass murder by the hand of the state? On either side, yes, Ukraine is run by a US-run puppet government. Of course, they are globalists. And of course, Putin, on the other hand, who's often called for a new world order, is also a globalist. And people who aren't aware of this and don't get this have some serious problems at this point as we see this war heat up. And the implications of this are much greater than a lot of people seem to realize. So in this video today, we're going to go into that and more, my friends. But first, make sure to check the links below. GOGETFUNDING.com, Patreon, subscribe star. We have a PayPal address, we have a Bitcoin address, and we have, of course, a Cointree link with multiple different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in, if you please. We have many options to help keep us as independent media alive as we fight back against this propaganda. Also, check out whamsurvival.com for long-term storable foods. It's never been more important, especially with all this happening and the supply chain crisis, never been more important to get long-term storable foods. This could get very ugly, and it could hit our soil as well in the US, in Canada, in Britain, if this propaganda keeps heating up as they distract from the other massive amounts of tyranny that they've enforced over the last 2 years. rncstore.com. Also check out in the description of this video, Richardson Nutritional Center, your source for Laetrile Online, made famous by G. Edward Griffin's book, World Without Cancer. Make sure to get your apricot seeds, Laetrile, amygdalin, and vitamin B17 there. Now, my friends, this is something that they have been pushing for a long time. Imagine, in the face of the global tyranny, with the vaccine tyranny, with the eugenics operations, with the economic crisis, to bring in war at the same time. It is a perfect situation for the global governments to push into the Great Reset, into the New World Order, the real New World Order that has been waiting in the wings for a long time, going from this tyranny worldwide with the vaccines into now let's get everyone to forget what we've been doing, the mass murder we've been doing worldwide, the lockdowns, the bondage, and make them patriotic for the government that continues to enslave them. Government is organized crime. Voluntarism always wins. Consent matters, my friends. And what we are witnessing here is absolutely catastrophic because, you know, a lot of people said, well, Russia is innocent. They would never do anything like this. They would never actually go along with this. Well, they are, because they're part of a greater plan that works with China, that works with Israel, that works with all these countries. We are seeing a repeat on a more technocratic scale of World War II, which was based in lies as well on all sides of the issue. The whole issue right now is statism, and it's heating up at a catastrophic levels. And yes, people are getting bombed in Ukraine right now. While the media is using that to make everyone want to, bow down and help Ukraine against Russia, the implications are obviously really massive and extremely dangerous, as many in Kiev turn off their lights and flee the city. And we are seeing most people I'm talking to on the ground in Ukraine haven't actually witnessed anything. I should mention that. Most people are like, no, nothing's really happening. But the media is creating a war. The governments are creating a war, and bombs are actually dropping because of it. And it's being pushed and propped up in order to create this tension, this conflict, this divide, this new world order. Ukraine warns radioactive dust could spread over Europe as fighting rages at Chernobyl nuclear plant. And of course, they are now fighting a war at Chernobyl, which is partially in Belarus, I should add. So this is obviously something that is spreading further and wider. And it could be something that could snowball. Again, I want to clarify. Most people I'm talking to in Ukraine aren't seeing any evidence of any war, except for military jets flying over and, a lot of police sirens and a lot of lights being turned off at night. But this is part of a fear-mongering plot to scare everyone into compliance. But nonetheless, there are actually bombs dropping. Again, this is something that is happening, but it is all scripted. And people on the ground on both sides, in Ukraine and Russia, are the victims of this, as is the case in basically every other war. It says the potential is rising for greater fallout from the war across Europe as intense fighting is being reported centered in the Chernobyl area. Ukrainian authorities are sounding the alarm over potentially disastrous scenarios which could ensue in areas of Chernobyl containment zone. Everyone's fine in Chernobyl, by the way. People have been living there ever since, and that's a whole other issue to get into, which includes an expansive region surrounding the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, where radioactive contamination is highest since an April 1986 disaster. Russian troops are reportedly entering the area from Belarus, according to Interfax. Advisor to Minister of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, Anton Gerashenko, said that Russian troops from the territory of Belarus entered the zone of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. Gerashenko stressed that if a nuclear waste storage facility is destroyed as a result of enemy artillery strikes, then radioactive dust can cover the territories of Ukraine, Belarus, and EU countries. And Ukraine's president has commented on this. He says, Russian occupation forces are trying to seize the Chernobyl NPP. Our defenders are giving their lives so that the tragedy of 1986 will not be repeated. Reported this to the Swedish Prime Minister. This is a declaration of war against the whole of Europe. Yeah, well, this is a script that some globalists probably at the United Nations wrote, and this is probably going to snowball into more mercenaries worldwide waging war. And it's totally, totally insane, my friends. I want to show you guys this video quickly, because this is coming out of Ukraine. And honestly, it's pretty insane. Watch this plane coming in the center. And here we go. And missile shoots, and people run and scream and take cover. Now, let me be clear. This video is war propaganda. There's both sides. War propaganda uses often real footage in order to get people to perpetuate war, when in reality, it should make people want to end all wars. Does anyone actually know what this war is being fought over? Territory, perhaps? Because the vast majority of people on the hawks on both sides of this, supporting Ukraine and supporting Russia, have absolutely no idea. This is team sports, my friends. This is sports. This is bread and circuses on a very violent and dangerous and globalist level. Does anyone actually know what this so-called war is being fought over? No. Most people involved have absolutely no idea what this is about. This is something that is being used on both sides for propagandizing complete control over the populace. And we've seen it so many times before with past proxy wars. Everything. Look, Hitler was propped up against the communists in the beginning of the 1930s by the U.S. government. Then the U.S. government propped up the communist Soviets, who mass murdered countless people in the Holodomor and etc. Tens of millions of people, propped up the USSR against Hitler, hand in hand with the tyrant Winston Churchill. And then they prop up the Mujahideen, later Al-Qaeda, against the Soviet Union. You see how this works? They propped up Iraq against Iran, and then fought against Iraq later. They armed and funded Ho Chi Minh in the early 1930s while the French were in Vietnam, and while Ho Chi Minh was in Washington with FDR. just in time to assassinate a bunch of the French leaders and then bring about a communist order in Vietnam. And then they ended up fighting against the same weapons that they gave Ho Chi Minh a couple decades later. It's all false. It's all fake. When I was out in the Middle East, I was talking to people out of Syria that were saying, you know, they watched the Turkish, Israeli, British, and US troops bring in guns and ammo and give them to strange people that suddenly showed up, and they built shacks and stuff in the, rural communities around Syria, and would just arm and fund them. And then a week later, there'd be an explosion. And then Israeli planes would go and bomb the city. And then before bombing the place that they had just built and with the armed and funded ISIS so-called rebels, they would drop letters to the ISIS rebels, and it would warn them that we are about to bomb you. So they would leave, and then they'd bomb the place and say, look, we're taking action against these terrorists. The government is organized crime. They're the ones doing this. All of this is scripted. 100% of this is government scripted and meant to put people in bondage. And at the same time, it also involves the banking system. Breaking: UK freezing assets of all major Russian banks. So here we go again with the attack on bank accounts as a global economy hemorrhages. On purpose, all by plan, because they want to move us into a technocratic world order based on social credit, carbon credits, vaccine passes, etc., where you are cut out of the banking system if you don't comply in every way, and therefore they can rule people with their money and with the fear and with the comfort of the groupthink, of the crowd, of wanting to impress your fellow man, because they are, robots, cogs in the system, and they want to be part of the crowd. They don't want to be socially ostracized. This is extremely dangerous. And, as we see these massive sanctions come from the UK regarding bank accounts and stopping Russian bank assets, which is totally insane and something that we have been reporting on for a long time, and a blatant attack, by the way, on Russia and the people of Russia, which now will bring in people from Russia to then support one side or the other, which is by design. We have to remember the same thing was happening in Canada. This is all happening at the same time because it's part of the same plan. Canada froze bank accounts of people linked to the trucker convoy protests. And this is why we need privacy coins, my friends. This is why we need things like Epic Cash. This is why we need things like Monero. This is why I have been promoting this for so long, because they will control you with your money. From supply chain to inflation to taxes to regulations to war to social credit and technocracy to the forced medication, the destruction of bodily autonomy, the fear mongering, and of course, health issues and destruction of private property, etc. This is how they get us, my friends. And this is why we need to take action now, not later. This is the call to arms. And by arms, I mean to privatize, decentralize yourself, take responsibility over your own life. Do not offload your responsibility on a bunch of globalist tyrants. Yes, Putin is more innocent, generally speaking, versus Ukraine, without a doubt. They've been propping up war against Russia forever. The 2016 elections, they really pushed that. They wanted war with Russia so that people would, for no reason, agree to going to war with one of the biggest superpowers in the world in the hands of the US, Israel, and Canada, and Britain, and these other countries. This is how they get us. And so Putin says a lot of anti-establishment things about the U.S. because he's part of another part of the world order, the other fraction, the controlled opposition. It's like, for example, CNN versus Fox News. Yes, Fox News seems more reasonable to most of us than CNN does. However, they're part of the same plan. They tell part of the story, but not the entirety of the story, in order to distract you from the entirety of the story and create their own story when the story starts to come out. This is called a limited hangout operation by the CIA. So people that actually believe that Putin has their best intentions in mind are idiots. Though, yes, I could see how they could fall for that in many ways, because of course, Putin is better than the US Israel world order, but they're still tied at the hip to Israel anyway. They're still tied at the hip to China. It's just the alternative side of the coin of globalism. Period. Yes, Putin said some good stuff against war in Syria, but he's also going to look out for his own empire propped up by international bankers and international financiers and people tied to the Israeli government. Of course, he is going to protect his own. All these people are controlled opposition. And I see people in the libertarian anarchist freedom communities saying, like, taking Putin's side. Why are you taking sides? War is governments murdering innocent people caught in between governments. Compliant slaves on both sides. And yes, this has been propped up for so long, from Crimea to today. And long before that, there have been attempts to create conflict with Ukraine, between Ukraine and Russia. Bordering countries, beautiful countries. Russia's beautiful, filled with beautiful people. Ukraine's beautiful, filled with beautiful people. And a rich history. And a dark history as well that's not so far back, not so far behind them. We're just perpetuating the circle, my friends. The food circle of cannibalism. And at the same time, imagine that things get heated between China and Taiwan. China might be there tomorrow, warns Chinese state pundit in dire Taiwan-Ukraine comparison. Amazing. Amazing. What do you think is going to happen next, my friends? I think I know. Also, this is a good time to not pay attention to people like Ben Shapiro, the CIA war-loving shill. Humanity is at war. Well, the government's at war with the humanity, I should say. I should also point out that humanity is based on individual responsibility, not compliance with the state. It is natural for people to be compliant and weak these days because people have been trained to be so. But this is a dead end. At the end of the day, freedom comes from within. You are the freedom or you're not. You don't hold it in your hands. It's not something you hold in your hands. You are free or you are not. And I'm really frustrated after all these years of having to continuously talk about this. Will this settle down? Probably. But it could result in people actually stupidly, blindly, without any reason and without any information, blindly supporting war with Russia, which is obviously fucking stupid and will sacrifice a lot of free, innocent people into bondage and death. And none of them will know why. We've been through this many times, and usually the war scenarios don't work. That's why, like with independent media, especially these days, though they've censored us so insanely, they've been using the other invisible enemy of so-called viruses to get people for the last few years. But now it does look like they're moving into something else. I hope to God that it fails miserably and they have to go to another plan, and they will go to another plan if it fails miserably, and there will still be a script to play out. Nonetheless, we need to adamantly reject this, because this isn't just war in the Middle East, which is tragic in itself. This is war with Ukraine. This is war with Russia. This is a conflict between China and Taiwan. This is a global war, and millions will die because of it if we don't reject it from the start right now. And time is already running out. Russian man bad, says Mr. Blackface, says the guy with dementia, says a silly haircut guy who calls himself a conservative while locking down civilization as they stand on a pile of the bodies they've sacrificed in the name of so-called good. The greater good of the greater number, that old collectivist mantra. Here we go again. At this point, if we don't realize that the main problem is the government, the main problem is the politicians, the main problem are these people that people look up to for no reason. You don't go to your neighbor's house and say, you don't bring your other neighbor with you to your other neighbor's house and say, hey, 2 versus 1, we just decided that you're going to pay for my kitchen cabinets. Well, I don't want to. Yeah, well, if you don't, we're going to put you in a cage and kidnap you. Well, I'm going to resist. Okay, well, then we'll kill you. That is government in a nutshell, but on a greater scale, and far more people end up being imprisoned and killed. Humanity can be governed individually via voluntarism. But if you create an order that's there to protect you and they're constantly going to war with each other, killing each other, locking you down, destroying your wealth, shutting down your bank accounts for opinions, destroying your very humanity, trying to make you unhealthy and die, then I think it's time to start asking yourself why in any way, shape, or form you could possibly support collectivism, possibly support statism. At what point do people go, hey, I think I should rule myself, because these guys not only are incompetent on the lower levels, but are evil and incredibly destructive on the higher levels. Every reason people say they need government, the problems that the government's there to solve are created by the government in the first place. This is why I am a voluntarist. This is why I'm a voluntarist anarchist, because I support humans, responsibility, individualism, not giant orders of people who follow orders and murder millions of people. Going back to ancient Greece, if you look back, and I've been to all over Pompeii and in places like, in Italy, and then all over Greece in old battlefields, and you'll see the ancient structures built for the wars and built for the politicians and campaigns since the beginning of this absurdity that we call democracy. The signs always say, change, change, change. Sound familiar? Change we can believe in. Real change. Obama, Trudeau, anyone? Oh, even Trump. Change. Biden. Change, 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 change. What is a change that people are looking for? Because changing the criminal in the suit who is stealing your money and murdering babies doesn't really do much other than perpetuate the very problem that you are saying that you want change from. The reality is perhaps the change you are looking for is within. Perhaps it's not the suit, the haircut, the dress. Maybe the change you're looking for is here. And maybe, perhaps those that bow to the state feel like they need to be provided for because they can't provide for themselves. They're offloading their responsibilities as human beings, which means they are giving up what it is, what is most important about humanity itself. As this continues to elapse, we will report on it. But I want to make sure that people know almost all of this is propaganda pushed by both Ukraine, Russia, Israel, China, US, Canada. It's false. It is fraudulent information. And most of the information we're going to get is going to be really conflicted and generally wrong. Again, I'm talking to people on the ground in Russia and Ukraine, and both sides are like, we're not seeing any issues. We're not seeing any problems. But the media is heating this up until it becomes a reality. But it can be very dangerous because they're winning in some ways because rockets have been fired and people are dying. And it perfectly fits the agenda for the Great Reset for the year 2025 and the eugenics operation to be ended by the year 2030, Agenda 2030 at the United Nations. This has been in the playbook for a long time. The Ukraine government is not your friend, my friends. Putin is not your friend either. Biden, Trump, not your friends. Boris Johnson, not your friend. Politicians, no matter what flavor they come in, the idea is immoral in itself because you're basically just stealing people's money to do things that some of the country wants and the other doesn't. And then you're using force against the free people to do the things that you want to do that could have been done on the free market anyway, with competition and actual, free will involved. All these things that these politicians do is to enslave you. Government only exists to grow. Collectivism begets collectivism. So reject collectivism, groupthink, the drums and trumpets of war that guide people blindly into the battlefield to fight for governments as they lick their chops, back both sides, prop up both sides, create fake stories to push people into a state of emotional compliance. The whole idea of government is to enslave you, nothing else. They are laughing in all of your faces if any of you out there are actually buying this. Whether you're saying we must protect Ukraine against Russia, or whether you're saying we must protect Russia against Ukraine. Most of these people don't even know why there's a conflict in the first place. And even if there was some sort of reason, those reasons are between government officials, and those government officials should go out back and duel and leave the rest of us alone. At this point, this is a great example or great argument for getting out of the system entirely. We're creating a new civilization, and they, on the other hand, won't give up without a fight. And we're seeing that fight in front of our eyes right now. And these are desperate moves, which means they are desperate. But we're going to be very desperate soon if we don't understand the lie and break free from the lie and break free from the chains that so many revere, which is the state, which is governance, which is offloading responsibility, which is offloading humanity itself, giving up our bodily autonomy, giving up our mind, giving up our whole self for the state. Cowardice, disgusting, pathetic. Don't stop standing for land masses and start standing for individuals, people, humanity itself. Anyways, I appreciate everyone watching today. We will be back at you with much, much more as this elapses. Make sure to get into privacy coins now, my friends. Like I said, Epic Cash. Go to Epic Cash community on Telegram to find out more about it. Get the wallet V as in Victor, ITE, and go send Bitcoin via cross-chain transaction to that and trade it into Epic Cash. This isn't investment advice. This is about safety against technocracy, against a cashless society, against the surveillance state, against these assets being frozen across the board. We need to be prepared. We need long-term storable foods. That's why I have whamsurvival.com, which you could check in the description. I'm not getting paid by Epic Cash, by the way. I really just, I think we need to do this now. This is the natural evolution of things. Very, very, very important. And of course, like I said, whamsurvival.com, long-term storable foods. We have rncstore.com, which is linked in the description as well for Laetrile. You got to stay healthy, my friends, to help keep us alive and yourself alive at the same time. It's a win-win. Of course, find us on Telegram, World Alternative Media, as well as our Telegram channel, World Alternative Media Announcements. Of course, we're on. We could really use any support we could get right now. We want to go overseas and report on a bunch of this stuff, from war to the insane tyranny we're witnessing, which has taken a slow pause in many places and is about to open back up and eat everyone alive. And people are falling for it and sitting on their hands because they feel like there's an eye in the storm. Well, we need to keep fighting even harder when there's an eye in the storm. That's when we have to fight the hardest, so that we don't see the return of these tyrannies. GoGetFunding.com, Patreon, Subscribestar. We have a PayPal address. We have a Bitcoin address, and we have a Cointree link with multiple different cryptocurrencies that you could donate in if you please, as well as Epic Fund Me. We need the finances right now to fight back against this. I hate to say this. I don't like doing any of the asking for money. We do this for free. I work every single day to bring you guys free content, and I'm happy to do it. And I'm happy with just a share and you pressing like and the notification bell and stuff like that. Hit the subscription button, all that. But at the end of the day, we really need to finance this operation, because when I was overseas in Milan last year, with 50,000 protesters in the streets, I was the only media there. That's how they get the revisionist history. That's how you end up with revisionist history. It's insanely important. In the Netherlands, 250,000 people in the streets, only media there. Paris, 10,000 people in the streets, only media there. It's how we need to continue to support independent media, that we're the only ones reporting on this history. And we need it now more than ever to be able to mobilize and understand what's going on around us before it's just reversed and changed and revised in real time. If they can revise history in one day, imagine what they can do in 80 years, my friends. Also, you can find us on BitChute, Odyssey, Rumble, and Brighteon at World Alternative Media, on dollarvigilante.tv, and on Hive, Steemit, and Float.app at Josh Sigurdson. We highly recommend you guys go to all those sites and in any way back us up, my friends. We're on the bad guys, TikTok and Instagram, World Alternative Media, as well as Twitter at World Alt Media and Getter at World Alt Media. We have a Teespring store and we have an Epic Fund Me campaign where you could donate an Epic Cash if you want. We have many, many other options, all linked in the description below this video. So help support any way you can. Share this video. Stand up against this propaganda before it's too late, because the false fake news will soon become a reality just by people believing it and falling for it. Appreciate everyone watching today. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.